The day THRAGG arrived on Earth, the planet did not receive a father. It received a weapon. In the original timeline, Earth got Nolan Grayson, better known as Omni-Man, a Viltrumite warrior, strong enough to conquer worlds, brutal enough to wipe out armies. Yet Nolan had something dangerous inside him. Time. Time to live, time to pretend, time to love, time to become weak in the eyes of the Empire. But swap Nolan with THRAGG, and everything changes immediately, because THRAGG is not the type of person who gets attached. This is the man who led the Viltrum Empire after its collapse, the strongest Viltrumite alive. The guy who made seasoned warriors look like background NPCs in their own fight scenes. If this man got assigned Earth instead of Nolan, then the entire Invincible story gets flipped upside down before Episode 1 even starts. The moment THRAGG lands on Earth, he does not bother with the soft suburban cosplay Nolan pulled off. No fake smiles at baseball games, no awkward dad jokes, no decades of pretending to be human. THRAGG studies humanity the same way someone studies ants building a hill before stepping on it. He would still need a cover identity because blending in gives information, but the difference is simple. Nolan wanted to understand Earth. THRAGG wants to evaluate Earth. Humanity becomes a project, a future asset, a world waiting for change. The scary part is nobody would suspect anything. To humans, he looks like another man, calm, collected, intelligent. Yet behind every conversation sits the brain of someone who has spent centuries serving an empire built on domination. Then comes the biggest butterfly effect of all. Debbie, does THRAGG still start a family? Honestly, yes, but not for love. THRAGG sees genetics as resources, strategy pieces. If he learns hybrid offspring between humans and Viltrumites work, then suddenly Earth becomes a laboratory. Mark Grayson still gets born. Except this version of Mark grows up under a completely different father. Forget supportive baseball dad Nolan. Mark gets raised by a living war manual. Every lesson becomes survival. Every conversation becomes training. You scraped your knee. Get up. You lost a fight. Train harder. You cried. Control yourself. Mark's childhood turns into boot camp with a roof. The result is terrifying because Mark awakens his powers much earlier. Nolan waited. THRAGG pushes. Hard. By the time Mark becomes a teenager, he is already stronger mentally than original Mark and far more dangerous emotionally. No goofy hero phase. No learning responsibility with friends. Mark becomes obsessed with proving himself because THRAGG turns affection into achievement. Every victory earns approval. Every failure feels like death. Then we hit the Guardians of the Globe moment, and this version gets wild. Nolan killed them secretly because he needed Earth weakened before conquest. THRAGG does not play stealth games if he sees no value in them. One night, the Guardians receive an emergency signal. Red Rush arrives first, then War Woman. Darkwing, Green Ghost, Martian Man, Aquarius, Immortal. They enter the headquarters expecting a threat. The threat is already standing there. THRAGG, no speech, no hesitation. Red Rush moves first and immediately realizes something is wrong because THRAGG catches him. Not predicts him, catches him. One hand, silence, then blood. War Woman attacks. Her mace shatters against him. Immortal charges. THRAGG tears through him like paper. The entire battle lasts minutes, maybe less. The Guardians die harder than in canon because THRAGG is stronger than Nolan and fights without emotional conflict. Earth loses its greatest defenders overnight. Cecil loses his safety net. Global panic starts, yet nobody knows who did it. Meanwhile, THRAGG goes home and eats dinner like nothing happened. This is where Cecil becomes the MVP of the timeline because he notices patterns. Too clean, too efficient, too Viltrumite. Except he has a problem. The only Viltrumite on Earth is the trusted hero living in suburbia. THRAGG knows Cecil watches him. Cecil knows THRAGG hides something. The entire planet turns into a cold war between the smartest human and the strongest Viltrumite alive. Meanwhile, Mark finally becomes a hero publicly. Earth celebrates. New protector. Son of Earth's greatest champion. But behind the scenes, THRAGG trains him harder, faster, brutally. Mark starts beating villains early. The Mauler twins get folded. Machine Head becomes irrelevant. Titan never rises the same way. Even characters like Angstrom Levy become dangerous earlier because Mark is changing the timeline too fast. Then comes the biggest disaster. The Flaxans invade. Original Mark struggled. This Mark wipes armies. THRAGG joins the fight once the portal opens. He enters their dimension. Entire civilizations disappear. Their world becomes an example. When THRAGG returns, he does not look angry. He looks disappointed. Humanity watches their supposed protector walk out of another universe covered in destruction, and suddenly the question appears. Are we safe because of him or trapped because of him? Debbie notices changes too. THRAGG never acts like Nolan, no warmth, no softness. Conversations feel calculated. She realizes she lives beside someone who performs humanity instead of feeling it. The marriage cracks early. Mark notices, tension rises, then the truth finally drops. THRAGG brings Mark somewhere isolated. Mountains maybe, desert maybe, does not matter. Same setup, different energy. Mark expects the Viltrum speech Nolan gave. Instead, THRAGG tells him everything. The Empire, the mission, Earth's future. No lies, no emotional reveal. He simply says humanity exists to strengthen Viltrum. Mark resists immediately because despite everything, Earth still shaped him. Friends, school, life. THRAGG expected this, he attacks. Now picture this fight. Original Mark fought Nolan and got demolished. This Mark fights THRAGG after years of brutal training. He lasts longer, not because he is stronger, because THRAGG made him stronger. Every hit becomes a lesson coming back to haunt the teacher. Buildings collapse, cities shake, satellites fail. Mark pushes harder than canon Mark ever did at this stage, and THRAGG still wins, badly. But instead of leaving Earth like Nolan did, THRAGG stays. That changes everything. Earth enters occupation mode. Not open slavery, controlled dominance. Governments disappear into agreements. Heroes get hunted. Sissel activates every contingency immediately. Reanimate, secret weapons, experimental projects. Nothing works. THRAGG dismantles them one by one. Cecil becomes a guerrilla commander fighting a losing war. Then something crazy happens. Mark escapes, broken, defeated, furious. This becomes his villain origin and hero origin at the same time. He gathers resistance. Team survivors, Atom Eve, maybe even villains. Because nobody wants THRAGG ruling Earth. Eve especially changes everything. Her powers give hope. Mark gains emotional support. Nolan never denied him, but THRAGG never gave him. Slowly resistance grows. Earth becomes an occupied world, hiding sparks of rebellion. Then the Viltrum Empire arrives expecting Earth already conquered. Instead, they find THRAGG halfway done. This creates another massive shift, because THRAGG gains prestige even faster. Earth becomes proof of his methods. Other Viltrumites arrive. Suddenly humanity faces not one monster, but an army. Mark realizes something horrifying. He is not fighting for Earth anymore. He is fighting for the future of every planet THRAGG will touch next. The rebellion becomes interplanetary. Alan the alien enters earlier. Coalition forces move sooner. Space war starts ahead of schedule. And because THRAGG never abandoned Earth, Mark grows up in constant conflict instead of delayed tragedy. This version of Mark becomes harder, smarter, less trusting. He loses innocence years earlier, yet something beautiful survives. His humanity. THRAGG spent years trying to kill it, failed every time. That irony becomes the core of the story. The strongest Viltrumite accidentally creates his own greatest enemy by raising him. Every lesson becomes ammunition against him. Every punch Mark throws carries years of pressure. Every act of kindness becomes rebellion. Then we reach the final confrontation years later. Earth is scarred, cities rebuilt, space filled with war. Mark stands opposite THRAGG again. Only now he is older, stronger, supported by allies. THRAGG still towers over him, still looks unstoppable. But there is one difference. THRAGG fights alone. Mark does not. Because humans stayed human. Eve stayed. Cecil stayed in spirit even if he died. Friends stayed. The world THRAGG tried to conquer became the weapon against him. Their battle tears across continents, oceans split, mountains vanish, satellites fall from orbit. THRAGG still dominates physically because he is THRAGG. The final boss before final bosses existed, yet Mark keeps getting back up. Same reason as canon, same reason always. Love. Sounds cheesy until you realize it beats empires. THRAGG cannot understand it. Never could. To him, attachment is weakness. To Mark, it becomes fuel. Every second the fight continues proves THRAGG wrong. Then imagine the ending. Mark finally wins, not through power alone, through endurance, through help, through humanity. THRAGG falls. Earth survives, but the cost is insane. Entire generations grew up under fear. Heroes died early. The world lost years of peace. Mark never became the optimistic kid fans knew. He became something else. A warrior raised by the worst possible father and somehow still choosing to protect people. That version of Invincible would hit differently because the entire narrative becomes a battle between nature and choice from day one. Nolan represented temptation. THRAGG represents inevitability. Nolan asked Mark to join him. THRAGG would demand it. Nolan left after losing faith. THRAGG stays until victory or death. And honestly, the scariest part of this whole scenario is not that Earth suffers more. Not that heroes die sooner. Not even that the Viltrum Empire arrives faster. The scary part is this. THRAGG almost wins. He comes closer than Nolan ever did because he lacks the flaw that saved Earth in canon. Love never distracts him. Regret never slows him down. Guilt never cracks him open. He is the Empire wearing human skin. Yet despite all that, despite centuries of conquest, despite strength beyond logic, despite turning Earth into a battlefield, he still loses. For the same reason every tyrant loses in stories like this. Humans refuse to stay broken. Mark refuses to stop standing. And somewhere in the ruins of a world THRAGG tried to own, the sun he forged with iron chooses compassion over conquest. The Empire gets a weapon, Earth gets a defender. THRAGG loses everything. The planet he came to dominate becomes the place that proves power was never enough.